Welcome everyone to TKO Boxing. This is our second video on the channel. So please help us out. Please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. As always, I'm joined with Ben and Josh. And I'm glad to say today we're going to be speaking about an actual boxing match. Unfortunately, last time we had to do Mayweather, Logan Paul. Slightly disappointed that was our first, our first video on the channel. But today we're of course going to talk about the big press conference which happened last night. Wilder versus Fury 3. Lads, I'll hand it over to one of you guys, but let's talk about Wilder first. A very didn't really say much, did he? Let's just put it that way. And what he did say is that blood is going to be shed. Ben, were you surprised at the way, the kind of strategy has gone down? Were you surprised how he came out? I mean, he kind of gave that bronze bomber persona again, something that we saw very much in the first, the first fight, but not so much in the second. He was a bit more laid back, but this time he was just very bronze bomber kind of attitude, and probably even a bit further than that, wasn't he?
Yeah, see, I was surprised. The way he came out at first, I thought, yeah, it's what you kind of expect. But then the headphones and the silence, wasn't expecting that. He's normally quite a mouthy bloke, and you think, well, what's he going to say? What's he going to say he's going to do? But it took me, I was really surprised by it. And then everyone's coming out with, oh, is it because of the mind games Fury plays? But then the more I think about it, I think it's his mind games. I think by the silence, I think he's trying to get under Fury's skin now. Whether it's a good tactic, we'll find out. Especially when it came out and what was it he said? Lord save me, Jesus Christ. I haven't looked at all the Wilder's videos, but as far as I know, that's not something he comes out with like Fury does. So again, the only thing he said, I feel's trying to get under Fury's skin. And the more I think about it, the more I don't disagree with what he did, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, we know that, obviously Fury likes this big spectacle. He likes to wind up. And, Wilder just kind of put the headphones on and was like, I'm not going to listen to it. Josh, do you kind of agree with that? In that, it might actually be a very wise tactic, or do you reckon Fury's still going to get under his skin?
No, firstly, the headphones thing's been done before, hasn't it? David Haye did it when he fought Bellew in the rematch, and obviously Bellew ring walked second. And, look how that ended. I think this will go the same way. I genuinely did agree with Tyson Fury. I thought it was just a ploy. Clearly Fury got in his head last time. I mean, Malik Scott, Wilder's trainer, alluded to the fact that they did give away the game plan for the second fight, and it went exactly how Fury said about it. And obviously Fury said again, well, I'll do it again, and because you're not good enough to do anything about it. And I think Wilder just doesn't want to be around that. I would agree with what Ben said to a point, if it wasn't for the fact that Malik Scott, his trainer, was far too prepped, if you know what I mean. He had far too many answers. I do genuinely feel like he kept talking about the mental side of Deontay Wilder and how much more committed he is. And I do feel like it seemed like something's probably come up and they've said, look, ignore Fury. You just focus on the training, which is what he kept saying. And then that's probably their best chance. But, it gets to fight week and, these big Vegas fights, they have their grand arrivals, don't they? There's, a press conference, a weigh-in. Fury's the master of mind games, isn't he? It's like, it's bordering on, obviously he's done a bit of it, it's bordering on WWE levels of how he plays with people. And he's done it before. If he can get in Vladimir Klitschko's head, who was at the top of the game for 10 plus years, he's going to be able to get in Deontay Wilder's head. And he's already done it before. So that it just reeked of, he just wanted to ignore him.
It's interesting that you raise the Klitschko thing, because that stare off at the end, 5 minutes, 40 seconds, apparently it was the longest in history. But that just kind of, you remember that interview where he said that he was facing off against Klitschko, weren't he? And said, I stayed in that sauna longer than you, and you knew it was a battle. And Klitschko was a bit like, was it? But Fury was like, no, you knew, and I outdid you there. That kind of felt like the exact same thing. I was watching it live and I just thought, Fury's not going to move. The whole building could be shut down. There could be cleaners cleaning up after the press conference. And if them two were still stood there, Fury would have not moved before Wilder. And that was definitely part of his mind games. And I kind of thought, when Wilder committed to that, I thought you've kind of undone what you've just aimed to do in a way, because you've still gave Fury that victory that I felt he was searching for.
The thing is, Tyson Fury, he's the master of the stare-off, isn't he? I mean, I know the fight never came to fruition, but even back to when he was going to fight David Haye and he refused to do the face-off because he was clearly being very sarcastic, but said, no, I won't do it. David Haye scares me. So yeah, he knows what he's doing, doesn't he? And I saw an interview after the press conference and Tyson Fury was saying he heard some of Wilder's team and entourage, saying D will be there all night long. And Fury welcomed it because he doesn't care, does he? Like you said, that it could have all finished and he would still stay there. He's in America with nothing better to do, was how he put it. So he was like, I'll stare at him. And I noticed it as well, like, to be Wilder, he didn't look, sometimes fighters are quiet, but they look almost quietly confident. I don't know what you guys thought, but I didn't think Wilder had that look about him. I kind of feel like he might have just took the fight because he's got no other option without sort of looking weak to the public. Because, if you refuse a world title fight and an immediate rematch, especially with, Joshua did it against Ruiz, didn't he? Went straight back into it. Where does he go from there? So I don't know what you guys think on that.
See, going back off what you were saying about, like, they look quietly confident. Now you said it, I get where you're coming from with that. I thought it was hard to read Wilder, but I get where you're coming from. You don't know what's going through his head. Because I found when he lost to Fury, most fighters, they're always in front of your face after that. And I felt like he fell off the map a little. Dylan White's the only name that was being thrown in with him for a little bit. And then it was like, he was gone. And then he was wondering what's going to happen with him. So I don't know. I think any other fighter, I'd be like, yeah, payday. But with Wilder, I'm not sure if he's going to come out here and he knows something that we don't, like Fury did in the second fight. Fury, even though he told everyone the game plan, he knew it was going to happen and no one believed him. And he did it.
It's an interesting... Okay. Sorry, Ben, I was going to say it's a very interesting one, isn't it? That because, of course, Fury said that. I must admit, I'm kind of leaning towards you with that one, Ben, but I'm not so sure if he is doing this for the money. I mean, the reason... he put a lot of money into the legal battle first, which he could have possibly have lost. I don't know, I could be wrong, but there's something about this. I feel maybe there was a few fights he could have gone after. Maybe he got criticised for when he decided to fight Fury in the first fight. Obviously, a lot of people said you took him at his weakest. Could sort of fighting like an Andy Ruiz have been a better option if they could have got that fight on, because Ruiz was a bit out of condition. I mean, he obviously had a comeback fight himself and still didn't look brilliant. That could have been a really good fight to kind of boost his profile. And then perhaps he could have gone and got that rematch after the Fury-Joshua fight, which maybe would have brought him in a bit more money than it will on this one. Because I think a lot of people won't pay for this because they're a bit frustrated that they've not seen Fury-Joshua. So I am kind of thinking, what are Deontay's kind of thoughts on this? I think maybe he doesn't want to do this just for money. And as you say, it's going to be interesting. Does he really think he can beat him?
Well, I think what it'll come down to, and again, I do just agree with Tyson Fury. They can talk about the different training methods, the new trainer, all they want. But ultimately, he'll revert to type because when he's pressured, and in fairness to Fury, there's been 2 fights and Fury fought both very differently. The first, he boxed and kept at range. The second, he just went in to take his head off, and it was really entertaining. But he's shown he can go both ways with Wilder, and he was robbed in the first fight. I'm not just saying that as a British fan or even a Fury fan. A lot of Americans said he was robbed in the first fight. So, and I think the same will happen again. I think Fury's promising the knockout again and saying it, at least the same as the last fight, if not faster. So he's going to come for pressure. And I think, ultimately, they're talking about the 18-month layoff, but you can't teach somebody how to box, especially at Tyson Fury's level, in 18 months. And I think when it comes to pressure, Wilder's 33, 34. He's going to do what he's always done, isn't he? And he's just going to look for that right hand. And, I know there's different views on this channel, but I've always thought with Wilder, look at his resume. Other than Luis Ortiz, who he's fought twice, but arguably waited until he was slightly past his best both times. Who's he actually fought? Well, who is an elite fighter that he's fought? He hasn't. He did take Fury, when he thought would be at his weakest. And let's be honest, he thought, I'll knock him out and that'll elevate my profile for the undisputed fight with Joshua. And it backfired massively because obviously all of a sudden he found himself in he's got to give a rematch. And like Fury said last night, where does this end? 4 fights, 7 fights, 10 fights? So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, see,
yeah, definitely.
the one thing I will say is with, like you saying, he beat him 2 different ways in the first and second fight. I do agree. The one thing I took from the press conference was Fury said he plans on putting a bit of weight on, so he's got a bit more power to knock him out. I think that's a bad move. I just think putting more weight on, it's going to take more energy if it goes to 12 rounds. He's going to be, could be that touch slower, and that's where Wilder's power could come into it. And I just think to myself, why change it when you've done it twice and Wilder still couldn't handle it? I just think putting weight on could be a bad move.
And I think there is one main thing to consider, and everyone's obviously got their opinion on this, a lot saying that he did the right thing. You know, obviously Wilder's former trainer. But let's not forget, there's not going to be anyone in Wilder's corner that's going to throw in the towel this time. And you do feel, as much as, you know, there's a lot of bad things to say about Wilder in that he is, you know, he's a one-punch knockout kind of person. If he can stay in there, even if he's getting battered for 8-9 rounds, if he can stay in there, all it does take is that one punch. And I think it's very risky to go up further weight, which might, you know, Fury, it might slow him down in the latter rounds as well. And does that maybe just set him up for that one big Fury, Wilder right hand to land in like the 10th round?
See, I don't think he will put the weight on, I'll be honest. I know his dad sort of made a lot about the fight against Otto Warling, and Ben Davidson had obviously gotten to lose a lot of weight. I think that clip went a little bit viral, actually, saying, you know, he was a stone too light. And I think he came in, I could be wrong on the exact numbers, but I think for the third Wilder fight, he came in about 10 pounds heavier than for the Warling fight. And, you know, he was caught on tape saying that, you know, that was his peak fighting weight. His whole team was saying that's his peak fighting weight. I honestly think that's just a throwaway comment. Like it's got us thinking. I think that's just to get the Wilder team thinking. I think he'll come in at around the same weight. Because in fairness to Fury, you know, what he kept saying was, I can tell you my game plan because it's not about him. It's just that you're not good enough to do anything about it. And if I was Tyson Fury, I would just be making sure I'd be coming into that fight as fit as I was for the last fight, as strong as I was. And you'd be a brave man to bet against the same result happening because he's beat him twice on completely different game plans. That's what I think anyway. You know, I could be wrong and sat here looking like a mug in a few weeks, but
Josh, do you hold any weight in the fact that obviously Scott Malick's come out and said that, you know, that the work behind the scenes has always been there? I mean, and there has been training videos of him using impressive footwork. So is there any merit at all, do you reckon, in what he said in regards to, you know, if we can get that working in the ring and him not just entering with that mentality of, I'm going to take someone's head off, that we could see like potentially a different fight? I mean, obviously Fury countered that and said it doesn't really matter because he'll naturally, when he's having a punch thrown at him, you know, he's going to revert back to trying to get that knockout. But I suppose if we look at it in a theoretical way, if we do, you know, if he can get Wilder moving with that footwork a bit more than what we've seen in kind of the training videos, you know, do you think there's any more hope for Wilder then?
Possibly short term, you know, in the first couple of rounds, because obviously he's going to come out trying to use his new tactics. And if he can box his way into a position and land, possibly. But I think we've also, and I'm not saying Fury would definitely be able to do it again, but I think what we all have to look at is Fury's took Wilder's best punch several times. You know, it's infamous, the 12th round of the first fight, and he got up. Now, I'm not saying he wouldn't put him down again. There's always that danger, but I think you've got to look at that. And then the second thing I always think of, like, you know, you hear reports like David Price. Just go with me on it. You'll think it's irrelevant, but just go with me. Yeah, a lot of heavyweights and a lot of people in boxing have talked about it. You know, if he could do what he does in the gym in sparring, he'd be an elite level heavyweight. And I think what you'd have to say, from what we've seen of Wilder, they're talking about, oh, it's always been there in the gym. Well, why hasn't he shown it at any point? You could argue he's never had to because he's never really fought the absolute elite. But also, some people are just like, you know, like a David Price, startled under the bright lights. It is a very different thing. It must be. So I hope he can bring something different, because obviously I will order the fight, but I am ordering it, you know, I'm expecting a Fury win, and I'm expecting it to be convincing. So I'd love him to make it a bit more exciting and show us something different.
See, going off what Scott said though, I think your fight can change. Wilder could come in and box, but I just think if they're the tactics you're going to go for, you don't go in against Fury for the first time with those tactics. Unless you know they're going to work, like AJ Ruiz, the second fight. AJ went in different tactics that everyone knew was going to work. It was like as soon as you watched the first round, you knew those tactics were right. But with Wilder, if you're going with tactics you aren't 100% sure are going to work, you don't go in against Fury. And I just think when he can fight southpaw, normal, he can try and knock you out, he can just have a flurry of punches, he can outbox you, he can do it all. I just think that's a risk going in, completely new tactics. Sometimes it's better to stick to what you know.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, that? Because I think we probably all agree, no matter what training does, Wilder is not going to outpoint Fury. So it still will come down to, whether he's got better footwork, whether he's throwing better combos, he's still going to need that power punch at the end of the day to end the fight. But obviously, as you said, Josh, like if he can get better combos to get him into that position more, maybe to help him plant his feet a bit more without actually having to telegraph what he's doing, then it might be something, but he's definitely not going to outpoint him. One interesting thing that people have said in that press conference, obviously the obvious thing people go to, that Wilder was doing it because whether it was mind games or just saying that he was done talking. Do you reckon it maybe was also to avoid some of the ridiculous things he said after the second fight? And if they got brought up in the press conference, let's face it, he would have just looked a bit of a fool. And I think Fury definitely would have looked to wind him up with that.
No, absolutely. I was fully expecting Fury to have his list of excuses written down and start, just mocking him. And Wilder probably did the only thing he could have done to avoid those questions, because they were going to come. That press conference would have been 45 minutes of the press just hounding him about the excuses, what's going to be different this time, because the excuses were that ridiculous, weren't they? Let's be honest, some of them were just quite frankly stupid. So he probably did the best thing he could have in that respect. Yeah,
I didn't think about that point as well, but yeah, you can't argue. It's like David A with the toe, isn't it? I always go back to that. When he did that against Klitschko and then against Bellew, he had a legitimate injury. He struggled to blame it on it. Like, he never really blamed the injury when it was justified. You can blame it, but because of the toe, it ruined for him.
In fairness to David Haye, when he picked up that Achilles injury against Bellew, he showed more heart for me than he did against that in the whole Klitschko fight. He did that in the 5th or 6th round, and he eventually got stopped in the 11th. That's a long time when you're fighting on one leg, especially David Haye, is effectively another power puncher, isn't he? So you take your legs away, you can't get the power. So I would defend Haye on that score. I mean, it's not really relevant to this one, but I would defend him there. As Wilder, for me, he's never going to, even if he knocks Fury out, that'll just trigger a 4th fight in reality. And then you'll never get away from those excuses, particularly, like my water was spiked and my costume was too heavy. Those two were just bizarre.
Yeah, I think some of the excuses were completely daft, really. I mean, for me, there's only really one more thing that I think we need to kind of have an opinion on, and that's probably what do you reckon Wilder was listening to, Ben? What do you reckon he was listening to in the press conference rather than actually listening to the questions itself?
He was probably Fury singing at the end of the fight, isn't it? Just to get him in that mood.
he's just got that on repeat, just to completely frustrated, so he gets in there just wanting to take his head off.
He's got Fury's picture on the inside of his glasses as well, just so he knows.
Yeah, that's it. He did take them off, did he, in the end, the glasses? But I hope he got paid by Beats as well for sporting those headphones, because I'm sure they've made a few sales off that. But yeah, gents, any final thoughts?
Well, I'm guessing Josh thinks Fury's going to win convincingly.
Yeah, I do. To be honest, might shock.
Early doors. What's the prediction? Early doors.
He'll knock Wilder out in rounds 4 to 7.
So you think he is going to do? If Fury's going to do exactly what he said he's going to do, and he's going to go in there and just end it before.
He's operated at a high level throughout his career. And I think, again, I just agree with everything he said. And you know, it's not often you can say that about a press conference. It doesn't matter what he does. Wilder's not good enough as a boxer to do anything about it. And to be fair to Fury, he can box. He's shown he can fight, particularly, you know, at that level, certainly. So, yeah, that's my prediction. He'll knock him out in rounds 4 to 7.
Ben?
See, I don't hide the fact I want Fury to win, but I just got this bad feeling Wilder's going to stop him. I just got this really bad feeling about it. I don't know when. I think if it will be late, probably 9 or 10. But
yeah,
I don't want it to happen, but I got this bad feeling. I don't want to see a 4th fight, no matter who wins.
I don't want to just replicate whatever you know what you said, to be honest, Ben, but I have just got a small feeling that there's just gonna be a Wilder. He's gonna hit one of those punches and he's gonna drop Fury. And rather than us hearing one of Fury's renditions, one of his songs, or we're just gonna hear Wilder grab the mic and shout "Bomb Squad" for about 20 seconds, which
I just want to say,
might not be quite as entertaining, but I think that'll still be funny.
No, if that happens, and you know, we'll do more on this as the fight draws nearer, because I know we've all got our certain opinions on these fighters. But if that actually does happen, I'll never do a video again, and I'll probably have to immigrate, to be honest.
I think if it does happen, I might just have to come on the next video if you're on it and shout "Bomb Squad" down the mic to start with. But look, that has been our second video, guys. Please, if you've not done so already, hit that like button, give us a subscribe, and you know, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Also, let us know how you feel about the channel itself. Is there anything else you'd like us to cover in the coming weeks? So yeah, get behind us, support the channel, and we shall see you on the next video.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.